We are joined here by Greenville University head coach Brian Patton to talk about the SLIAC All-Decade Men's Cross Country Team. Thank you for joining us today, Coach.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
So Greenville University started out the decade with a championship, and now you closed out the decade with 4 straight championships. Has there been one kind of key consistent focus or something that kind of links the start and the end of the decade together? What's been that key to that success?
Well, I have to say that actually when I went back and looked at the last 10 years, I was thinking, oh man, we struggled there for a while in the early 2010, 11, 12, 13. Like it was like, hold it, I didn't want to remember those years. So, yeah. I actually thought we were more consistent than that, and I found that maybe we weren't as consistent as I remember us being. I do tell our kids that one of the things to be successful in anything is to be consistent, and so I just think it's trying to just continue to do things that we've done before because they've worked, and so if we can just continue to do that. But as you know, in the college setting, recruiting is such a big part of the thing. And as I look back in those years for us, I had just gotten married and I had 2 young boys. And I thought, well, that's an interesting time period in my life. Yeah.
Yeah, that is pretty neat to look back, and kind of reminisce about that. More recently, you've been headed up by a couple of outstanding individual championship runners like Dylan Goodyear and John Mangold. Can you talk about them and their careers a little bit?
Sure. John, he was a really good runner coming out of high school. And so we had high hopes for him. And he was a Division III national qualifier in track and field. It just so happens that it seemed at the conference meet, it was either in his first couple of years, he had arguably the three of the best runners ever from Principia that he had to deal with, and then just didn't have fantastic conference meets, although he was runner of the year for the year, but he didn't win a conference championship. I don't think. And so that was an interesting fact for John, but John was a very talented and very consistent guy that we could always rely on. And for Dylan, I think in the last 10, 11 years, there's only been 3 guys that have doubled, winning twice. And that was him, and Abram Ding did it. And then Zach Mathiasen, I think, was a double winner as well. And so, we call him Goody. I mean, Goody was a guy that you could count on as well. And when you look back, he was on a team. They never lost his 4 years. Even as a freshman, he came in and did a great job in that conference meet as a freshman. And you just never had to worry about him having a bad race.
Coach, you must have been looking at my notes because my next question was going to be about Abram Ding from Spalding University, one of the, as you mentioned, 3 runners to repeat as a champion. What do you remember about Abram on the courses?
What I can remember is Spalding went from being a decent team to the best team in the conference during his time. And so I think maybe they were third and then rounded that out with at least 1 win, if not 2 wins, with Abram leading the charge. So he helped transform that team.
Yeah. You mentioned also the Principia trio there a while ago with Zach Mathiasen, him, Shane Winters-Hicks, and then Nate Richards all qualified for nationals in the same year. What do you remember about that Principia trio?
Yeah, well, some things they don't want to remember and things that I do. But, like that course on that day, and I still, at the conference meet, they ran so fast, and had someone else hosted that meet, I would have said that course was short, something was wrong, and I know exactly how short it was, and it wasn't very short, and those guys ran fast. But the thing is they had those 3 studs, as you mentioned, all qualified for nationals, and then they had Abe Ott, who's on the list, and so they had 4 guys in the top 9 on one of those years, and we were just fortunate to have a 5th runner come through who I think, if I remember right, it was Colin Kessinger as a freshman. And I can remember yelling in the race, Colin, if you do this, we're going to be kissing you at the finish line. And sure enough, somehow, even with them getting the top 3, that we were able to pull off a team win. And it came down to role players, and not just front runners. But those guys were there's nothing you could do. I mean, they were 30 seconds to 45 seconds to maybe even a minute faster than your best guy on the best day.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point that you kind of mentioned there about the team depth. You know, cross country, it's kind of you're running individually, but then you're also working together as a team. And, you know, it really takes that whole team aspect to really win a championship. So then I have another question about another Principia guy. Of course, we can't talk about this past decade without talking about Wiley Mangelsdorf from Principia, three-time national qualifier, including the SLIAC best ever finish at nationals with 5th place. What do you remember about Wiley?
I just wanted him to graduate. He kept staying there. I kept thinking, hey, is this the last year? Is this the last year? Excuse me. He was fun to watch, and he was a competitor, and it didn't matter whatever level, whatever meet it was, that kid could run. So I just was glad that he graduated.
And then finally, Coach, my final question for you. What other runners are there that you kind of, you know, really enjoyed watching during your time?
Somebody that stood out to me is Jesse from Westminster. And it wasn't because he was the number 1 in the conference, but that kid gave you everything. Like, I can remember them running him, I don't want to say to death, but they ran him a lot, like at the conference track meets. He'd run the 10K and the 5K and the 1500 and the steeplechase. And I can just remember him coming off the track for what was his last track meet, which was at our place, his last conference meet, and me just going up to him and just saying that I was really proud of him as a competitive coach because of what he gave to the sport. And so while there's other runners who, you know, may had more accolades at different times, but I just appreciated the effort that he gave to his team and to the sport when he went out there.
That's great. Well, thank you again, Coach, for taking some time out of your day to look back on this past decade in cross country. And we hope to see you out on the race courses again soon.
Absolutely. Thanks, Brian.
All right.